This video is brought to you by Sync My Music. Hi everyone, so in the last video we were talking about what a creative brief looks like, and in this video I want to talk about a little bit about what my template looks like in Cubase. So with a template you basically have already laid out your tracks, you've done your routing, you've basically already prepped your DAW and you can start right away with composing. This is way easier than constantly need to set up all your tracks, all your effects buses, so it really increases your workflow overall. So this is what my template looks like when I start it up. There is nothing regarding events. The only thing that I have are my main instruments groups. So all my instruments are categorized in groups. I have my drums, I have my rises and hits, I have my synthesizers, my long strings and my short strings. I'll be talking about why I make differences in long and short notes. But basically it's all categorized in groups, and all these groups have subgroups like big drums, loop drums, cymbals, timpani, drum kits. And when you go into a subgroup, you basically have also by library. So I have the BBC Symphony Orchestra, I have hammers, Hans Zimmer percussion. It's basically all Spitfire Audio. I'm sponsoring them massively here. Oh, and there's Devastator Pro. So basically all these groups have subgroups, and they have, depending on library, also another subgroup. And then in this group you have the, for example here you have different tracks that are deactivated by instruments. So I have my bass drum, second bass drum, snare drum, second snare drum, mid-range drum, and this goes for all the libraries basically, or most of the time just the sounds that I need. I don't use all the instruments from a library. Sometimes I would like to change something up, but most of the time it stays with it stays like this. And the reason that I deactivate my my instrument tracks is because my computer, well, it is a powerful computer, but not as powerful as loading everything in. I mean, it's around, right now it's already at 555 tracks. It can go up to 1000 if I activate all the tracks, more than 1000 even. So my CPU, my computer, my memory cannot handle that much memory or load so much instruments in at the same time. So this is the reason why I have deactivated my tracks. And Cubase has a really neat feature. If you go to File, or if I think it was Edit, you can basically edit key commands. If I go to key commands in the options in Cubase and I type in enable track, you get disable enable track, and you see that I can assign basically a key command. For me it's shift and backspace. So if I click on a track, like for example the bass drum, and this will take a little bit because it's a very big library. If I press shift and backspace, yeah, you can see it has been loading in. So with shift and backspace I can simply also deactivate the track. So by having a shortcut to quickly disable and enable my tracks is a huge advantage to my workflow. So yeah, it's a great tip that I give you can use right away. I highly recommend using this trick because it saves you a lot of time while composing and producing a track. So when I've activated my track, if we go pressing F3 on a Windows computer, we go into the mixing window, and then you can see here the yellow fader is an instrument track, and all the blue faders are the subgroups of those tracks. So every instrument track goes to a subfolder, so big drums, snares, cymbals. It basically corresponds with the subgroups I have in my layout, so big drums, loop drums, cymbals, and that kind of stuff. So I have subgroups for snares, cymbals, but also for risers, percussion, synths, guitars, strings long, strings long solo, and strings long ensemble, because I would like to have more control over my solo instruments and my ensemble instruments with strings, but also with brass and with woodwinds. So that's basically all divided into subgroups, and I can easily change my parameters per group. So these subgroups are all routed to my main mix bus, and that mix bus is going to my stereo out, which is all the way at the end of my chain. So besides having these mix groups, I also have separate reverb send tracks. So reverb for the drums, reverb for the guitars, but also reverbs for the strings long and for the strings short. Why I'm using different reverbs for strings. So for the long strings, it would be okay to have a very big sounding reverb, but for short strings like staccato and pizzicato, you might want to have a shorter decay or shorter reverb tail than you would have with long strings. And the same principle I apply to the woodwinds and the brass. So with the reverb, I have on the Centric the Cinematic Rooms Pro reverb, and that reverb is then routed to an equalizer because I would like to, I really like to have full control over the sound of the reverb as well. So I have my Cinematic Rooms plugin, which has its own settings preset. I can always change it, but I have a preset to the drums, and per group it's all different. And then when I go to the equalizer, I have a cut of around 38 Hertz and around 10 kilohertz. So I really make a cutoff on the high end and the low end just to avoid being it too low and muddy, and to avoid being it too harsh. So really trimming the reverb this way gives you much more control than you would have it on a Centric with just the reverb. It's different for everyone. Some people like to use the high cut filter or the low cut filter on the plugin if they already have one, but I like to do it this way. I've learned it this way at the audio engineering course that I followed, and for me it's just my way of working. So all the subgroups also have their own settings, and if we go to the group, so every group has their standard. It has an equalizer that's already been prefixed. It has a tape saturation. I'm not going to show you all the details because I like to have a couple of secrets for myself. But basically, it all has an equalizer and a tape saturation per group, and they're also set differently according to those groups. And then also these groups have a Centric, which can go to their corresponding reverb. So in the case for the string effects, it goes to the strings long because it's effects. And at the very end of the mixing bus chain, I have my main mixing bus, which features a parallel compression. And parallel compression is basically putting a compressor, crank it up, crank the thresholds all up. I'm using the, let's see over here, I'm using the Supercharger GT from Native Instruments. So I have my parallel compression. I'm using it on the Centric, so I can control the amount of the compressor a little bit better. So I can decrease the volume of the compressor, and I can increase. If it's a very epic trailer track, I can crank it all up to make it sound very big and pumping. But for the rest, there is a equalizer that has a standard cutoff of around let's see, 20 Hertz. So it really gets rid of the rumbling low end. It makes it more balancing. This is a trick I'm giving you for free away here. So try to, in your compressor, make a very cut at the 20 Hertz. For me, it's always working. It really gets rid of this very low, muddy bass sounds, and it gives more transparency to your tracks. And for the rest, I'm using Fresh Air from Slate Audio, which gives you, it's a sort of an exciter plugin. It really gives a more sparkling, more richness in the higher frequencies of the track. It's a free plugin, you can download it right away. And then I'm using a tape saturation plugin, and I'm using the Masterdesk Classic free plugin from Brainworks, and I'm using on this one, depending how the track sounds, the stereo enhance button, and then make some adjustments to the stereo image of the track. So all the free plugins I just mentioned, they are in the description below. If you want to download them, you can get them right away. So they are being of a great help for me in my production music career. So I really recommend you to test these plugins to see if they can work in your template, in your workflow. So that's the end for this video. I really hope you like the tips and the tricks I gave you. I really hope you can start working on templates for your compositions. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. I try to reply as fast as I can, at least in 24 hours. I cannot guarantee it. But if you have any questions, let me know, and I try to help you out as best as I can. So in the next video, we'll be talking about some composing tips and tricks that I'm using in the track that we are going to create with the live strings. So thank you for watching, and I see you in the next video.